Hello, and welcome to Sleepy Philosophy. It's lovely to have you here tonight, wherever you might be listening. Perhaps you're tucked beneath warm blankets, or settled into a favourite chair as the day draws to a close. Take a moment to let your shoulders soften and your breathing deepen. Tonight marks the beginning of a new weekly series of book summaries and reflections on some of the world's most renowned works of philosophy. Each week, we'll explore the timeless thoughts of the great minds who've shaped the way we see ourselves and the world around us. If you have any favourite philosophy books you'd love to hear reflected on in future episodes, please leave a comment below and I'll be sure to add it to the list. To begin this journey, we're delving into one of history's most intimate philosophical works, a book that was never meant to be published, never intended for our eyes, yet has guided millions toward inner peace for nearly 2,000 years. We're exploring Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the private journal of a Roman emperor who ruled the known world, yet found his greatest battles were with his own thoughts and emotions. Before we drift into these ancient reflections, I want you to know that there's no need to grasp every concept or remember every detail. Simply let these ideas wash over you like gentle waves, carrying away the tensions of the day. Marcus Aurelius wrote these notes to himself during some of the most challenging moments of his reign, often while commanding armies on the harsh frontiers of the Roman Empire. He never imagined that his private struggles with anxiety, duty, and mortality would one day comfort countless souls seeking rest and wisdom. What makes the Meditations so uniquely suited for our sleepy contemplation is their deeply personal nature. These aren't grand philosophical treatises written for students or public audiences. They are the raw, honest thoughts of a man trying to make sense of his place in the universe, struggling with the same fears and hopes that visit us in our quiet moments before sleep. Marcus Aurelius was simultaneously the most powerful person in the world and deeply human in his vulnerabilities. Born in 121 CE, Marcus Aurelius came to power during what historians call the height of the Roman Empire's glory. Yet his reign was marked by constant warfare, devastating plagues, and personal tragedies. He lost numerous children, faced rebellions, and spent years away from his beloved Rome, living in military camps along dangerous borders. It was during these difficult times, often by flickering lamplight in his campaign tent, that he turned inward and began writing the reflections we now call Meditations. The philosophy that shaped his thinking was Stoicism, a school of thought that emerged in ancient Greece and found its fullest expression in Rome. But don't let the word Stoic mislead you into thinking this philosophy was about suppressing emotions or remaining coldly detached. True Stoicism, as Marcus Aurelius practiced it, was about finding profound peace through acceptance, wisdom, and a deep understanding of what we can and cannot control in life. At its heart, Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control external events, other people's actions, or even our own bodies and lifespans. But we do have complete authority over one realm: our thoughts, our judgments, and our responses to whatever life presents us. This simple yet revolutionary insight forms the foundation of everything Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself during those long, difficult nights on the frontier. Imagine the scene: the most powerful man in the world, responsible for the lives and welfare of millions, sitting alone in his tent after a day of making life and death decisions. The weight of empire on his shoulders, the constant pressure of war and politics, the grief of personal losses. Yet instead of turning to wine or distraction, he turned to his journal, working through his thoughts with the patience of a philosopher and the honesty of someone who knew these words were meant for his eyes alone. This authenticity permeates every line of the Meditations. When Marcus writes about anger, we feel his struggle with his own temper. When he reflects on mortality, we sense his genuine confrontation with the deaths of loved ones. When he speaks of duty, we recognize the voice of someone who often wished he could retreat from the world's demands, but chose to remain engaged out of a sense of service to something greater than himself. One of the most striking aspects of Marcus Aurelius's approach to philosophy was his integration of cosmic perspective with practical daily concerns. He would begin a meditation by contemplating the vastness of the universe and the fleeting nature of human life, then immediately turn to advice for dealing with difficult people or managing his own emotions. This seamless movement between the grand and the intimate makes his reflections particularly soothing for bedtime contemplation. The emperor understood that peace of mind doesn't come from avoiding life's challenges, but from changing our relationship to them. He writes frequently about the importance of accepting what comes to us as part of the natural order of things. This doesn't mean passive resignation, but rather an active choice to work with reality rather than against it, to find the hidden gifts in every experience, even the painful ones. Marcus Aurelius was particularly drawn to the Stoic concept of the view from above, imagining himself looking down from a great height at the affairs of human beings. From this elevated perspective, the things that typically cause us anxiety and sleeplessness begin to appear in their proper proportion. The embarrassment that keeps us awake, the worry about tomorrow's meeting, the frustration with a family member, all of these take on a different quality when viewed from the standpoint of cosmic time and universal nature. This practice of shifting perspective was not mere intellectual exercise for Marcus. It was a practical tool for maintaining sanity and effectiveness in an incredibly demanding role. When faced with betrayal from trusted allies, devastating military defeats, or the death of beloved children, he would return to these broader views, finding in them not escape from reality, but a more complete understanding of his place within it. The Meditations reveal a man who was constantly working to align himself with what he saw as the rational order of the universe. He believed deeply that there was a divine reason, or logos, that governed all things, and that human suffering came primarily from fighting against this natural order, rather than learning to flow with it. This wasn't fatalism. Marcus Aurelius was an incredibly active ruler who fought tirelessly for justice and the welfare of his people. Rather, it was a way of maintaining inner equilibrium while engaging fully with life's demands. What's particularly moving about reading the Meditations is witnessing someone of such immense external power grappling with the same internal struggles we all face. Marcus writes about the difficulty of getting out of bed in the morning, about dealing with irritating people, about the temptation to procrastinate or avoid difficult tasks. He reminds himself repeatedly about the shortness of life, not from a morbid fascination with death, but from a desire to live each day with proper attention and gratitude. The emperor's reflections on mortality are among the most profound in all of philosophy, yet they're delivered with a gentleness that makes them comforting rather than frightening. He saw death not as an enemy to be feared, but as a natural transition, like a flower returning to the earth from which it grew. This acceptance of mortality wasn't born from despair, but from a deep appreciation for the temporary gift of consciousness and the opportunity to contribute something meaningful during our brief time in the world. Marcus Aurelius also wrote extensively about the interconnectedness of all things, seeing himself as part of a vast web of relationships that extended from his immediate family to the entire cosmos. This sense of belonging to something larger than himself provided both comfort and motivation. When he felt overwhelmed by his responsibilities, or discouraged by human cruelty and folly, he would remind himself that he was playing his part in a much greater drama, one whose ultimate meaning might be beyond his understanding, but whose fundamental goodness he never doubted. The practical wisdom embedded in the Meditations emerges from this cosmic perspective. Marcus Aurelius offers guidance on how to deal with difficult people by remembering that they too are part of the universal community and are acting according to their understanding, however flawed it might be. He suggests responding to insults and injuries not with anger, but with a kind of philosophical curiosity about what drives human behaviour. This approach isn't about becoming a doormat or avoiding necessary confrontations, but about maintaining inner peace while engaging with life's inevitable conflicts. Perhaps most relevantly for our sleepy contemplation, Marcus Aurelius wrote frequently about the importance of the present moment. He recognised that anxiety comes from projecting into an uncertain future, while depression often arises from dwelling on an unchangeable past. The only place where we actually have any power, he reminds himself again and again, is right here, right now. This moment, this breath, this choice, these are the only realities over which we have any influence. As we prepare to drift into sleep alongside these ancient meditations, we can take comfort in knowing that we're joining a conversation that has been going on for centuries. The same questions that kept Marcus Aurelius awake in his tent nearly 2,000 years ago. Questions about meaning, mortality, duty, and love are the ones that visit us in our quiet moments. The same struggles with anger, fear, and disappointment that he wrote about are the ones we face in our daily lives. But we also have access to the same sources of strength and wisdom that sustained him through his challenges. The ability to step back and see our problems in broader perspective, the recognition that this too shall pass, the understanding that we are part of something much larger and more enduring than our individual concerns, the knowledge that we can choose our responses to whatever life presents, and that this choice is perhaps the most profound freedom we possess. Tonight, as we let these reflections carry us towards sleep, we're not just learning about ancient philosophy, we're connecting with the timeless human quest for peace, meaning, and wisdom. We're joining Marcus Aurelius in his tent, feeling the weight of responsibility lighten as we remember our place in the larger order of things. We're allowing his gentle voice, speaking across the centuries, to remind us that we are not alone in our struggles, and that there is indeed a way to find rest even in the midst of life's greatest challenges. Let these thoughts settle over you now like a warm blanket, knowing that the wisdom of the ages is here to comfort and guide you. The same stars that shone down on Marcus Aurelius as he wrote these meditations are shining on you tonight, connecting you to the endless chain of seekers who have found solace in the recognition that we are all part of one great, mysterious, and ultimately benevolent whole. Now we find ourselves drawn deeper into the heart of Marcus Aurelius's wisdom, where his personal struggles become our own gentle teachers. In these quiet hours before sleep, there's something profoundly comforting about discovering that even an emperor, with all the power and responsibility that came with ruling the known world, faced the same fundamental human challenges that visit us in our own quiet moments. As you settle more deeply into rest, let your mind drift to the emperor's reflections on morning routines and the difficulty of rising from bed. Even Marcus Aurelius, this towering figure of ancient philosophy, struggled with what we might recognize as our own reluctance to begin each day. He writes to himself with remarkable honesty about the temptation to stay warm under blankets rather than face the duties that awaited him. This admission creates bridge across an immediate 1,000 years, connecting his imperial tent on some distant frontier with your bedroom tonight. But notice how he transforms this very human weakness into a source of philosophical strength. Rather than berating himself for these natural inclinations, Marcus uses them as opportunities to reflect on purpose and duty. He reminds himself that human beings are made for activity, for contributing to the common good, for engaging with life rather than retreating from it. Yet he does this with a gentleness toward himself that we might learn from in our own self-talk. The emperor's understanding of human nature runs deep through his observations about the people around him. He spent countless hours dealing with difficult personalities, managing conflicts, and trying to maintain peace in an empire stretched across vast distances and diverse cultures. His reflections on these interactions offer us a masterclass in patience and understanding that remains remarkably relevant for our own relationships and daily frustrations. When Marcus writes about encountering arrogant, ungrateful, or deceitful people, he doesn't do so with the bitter cynicism we might expect from someone in his position. Instead, he approaches these challenges with what can only be described as philosophical compassion. He reminds himself that such people act from their own understanding of what is good and bad, however flawed that understanding might be. They are, he notes, his kinsmen in the cosmic community, sharing in the same rational nature that connects all human beings. This perspective becomes particularly soothing when we consider our own daily interactions with challenging people. Marcus suggests that we can maintain our inner peace not by avoiding difficult people or becoming hardened against them, but by understanding that their actions flow from their current level of wisdom and awareness. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting harmful behavior, but rather maintaining our own equilibrium while engaging with the world as it is, not as we wish it were. The Emperor's thoughts on the temporary nature of all things provide another layer of comfort for those seeking rest. He frequently returns to the theme that everything we see around us, everything that causes us anxiety or excitement, is in constant flux. The people who trouble us today will one day be gone, as will we ourselves. The problems that seem so pressing in this moment will dissolve into the larger flow of time, becoming no more significant than waves that have already passed. This perspective isn't meant to induce despair about the meaninglessness of life, but rather to provide relief from the weight of taking everything so seriously. Marcus finds freedom in recognizing that his role is to play his part well while he's on the stage, without becoming overly attached to the particular drama unfolding around him. This detachment allows for full engagement without the suffering that comes from grasping too tightly to outcomes beyond our control. The concept of the inner citadel becomes particularly relevant as we prepare for sleep. Marcus frequently refers to the mind's ability to maintain its tranquility, regardless of external circumstances. This inner fortress cannot be breached by outside events, harsh words, physical discomfort, or even the prospect of death. The key to accessing this refuge lies in recognizing what truly belongs to us and what does not. Our thoughts, our choices, our responses to events. These constitute our true domain. Everything else, including our reputation, our physical comfort, and the actions of other people, lies outside the circle of our control. This recognition brings immediate relief because it drastically reduces the number of things we need to worry about. Instead of trying to control the uncontrollable, we can focus our energy on the one area where we actually have power, our own minds and choices. Marcus's approach to pain and suffering offers particular comfort for those whose rest is disturbed by physical discomfort or emotional distress. He doesn't dismiss these experiences or pretend they don't matter. Instead, he offers a framework for relating to them differently. Physical pain, he suggests, affects only the body, not the essential self. We can acknowledge pain without allowing it to disturb our inner equilibrium. Similarly, emotional suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. The Emperor reminds himself repeatedly that external events are neutral until we assign meaning to them. A financial loss is just a change in circumstances until we label it as terrible or unfair. A criticism from another person is just words until we decide it threatens our self-worth. This doesn't mean suppressing natural emotional responses or pretending that losses don't hurt. Rather, it means recognizing that we have more choice than we usually realize in how we relate to our experiences. We can feel sadness without being overwhelmed by it. We can acknowledge fear without being paralyzed by it. We can experience disappointment without letting it define us. The Emperor's reflections on mortality, while they might initially seem like unusual bedtime contemplation, actually offer profound peace. Marcus doesn't view death as an enemy to be feared, but as a natural transition, no more alarming than sleep itself. He often compares death to other natural processes, the changing of seasons, the dissolution of compounds back into their elements, the constant transformation that characterizes all of existence. This perspective helps put daily worries into proper perspective. The embarrassment that keeps us awake at night, the anxiety about tomorrow's responsibilities, the frustration with people who've disappointed us. All of these concerns take on a different quality when viewed from the standpoint of our temporary residence in this world. We're here for such a brief time that it seems almost wasteful to spend our precious moments in unnecessary suffering. Marcus frequently reminds himself that he is part of a larger whole, connected to all other rational beings through shared participation in cosmic reason. This connection means that his individual welfare is bound up with the welfare of the entire community of rational creatures. When he acts justly and kindly, he's not just being noble, he's fulfilling his function as part of the larger organism of existence. This sense of cosmic citizenship provides comfort on several levels. It means we're never truly alone, even in our most isolated moments. It also means that our actions matter, that the kindness we show and the justice we practice contribute to something larger than our individual lives. And it reminds us that the conflicts and divisions we see around us are temporary disturbances in a fundamentally unified reality. The Emperor's practice of evening reflection offers a model for processing the events of each day before sleep. Rather than letting experiences pile up unexamined, Marcus regularly took time to review his actions, thoughts, and responses. This wasn't a harsh self-judgment, but a gentle accounting, an opportunity to learn from mistakes and appreciate progress made. This practice of reflection serves multiple purposes for those seeking restful sleep. It provides closure to the day's activities, preventing them from continuing to churn in the mind after lights are out. It offers opportunities for self-forgiveness when we've fallen short of our own standards, and it allows us to notice and appreciate the small victories and kind actions that might otherwise go unrecognized. Throughout all of these reflections, what emerges most clearly is Marcus Aurelius's fundamental kindness toward himself and others. Despite holding the most powerful position in his world, despite facing constant pressures and disappointments, he maintained a basic gentleness that infuses all of his philosophical observations. He doesn't demand perfection from himself or others. He simply asks for sincere effort, honest self-examination, and a commitment to doing what seems right in each moment. This gentleness becomes a gift to those of us who encounter his thoughts across the centuries. We can rest in the knowledge that wisdom doesn't require harshness, that strength can be soft, that the deepest insights often come wrapped in compassion. As sleep approaches, we can carry this gentleness into our dreams, knowing that tomorrow offers fresh opportunities to practice the ancient arts of acceptance, kindness, and inner peace that Marcus Aurelius explored in his tent so long ago. The emperor's words become a kind of lullaby for the thinking person, a reminder that the struggles we face are not unique to our time or circumstances, but are part of the eternal human condition. In recognizing this shared experience across time, we find both humility and comfort, understanding that we are part of a long tradition of people seeking wisdom, peace, and meaning in a complex world. As we continue deeper into our exploration of Marcus Aurelius's profound reflections, we find ourselves drawn into the very heart of what it means to live with grace amid uncertainty. These pages of the Meditations reveal an emperor wrestling not with external enemies, but with the eternal human challenge of finding peace within ourselves when the world around us feels chaotic and beyond our control. Tonight, as we rest in this gentle exploration, we can take comfort in knowing that the struggles Marcus faced in his private moments mirror our own. The anxiety about tomorrow's responsibilities, the frustration with difficult people, the grief over losses we cannot prevent, the worry about things we cannot change. These universal experiences create an intimate bridge between his ancient world and our modern lives, reminding us that wisdom is not about transcending human nature, but about working skillfully with it. One of the most striking aspects of Marcus's approach to life was his practice of memento mori, the remembrance of death. This might seem like a dark contemplation for bedtime, but the emperor understood something profound about this practice. By regularly reflecting on the temporary nature of all things, including our own lives, we develop a deeper appreciation for the present moment and a healthier perspective on our daily concerns. When Marcus writes about death, he does so not with morbid fascination, but with the gentle acceptance of a philosopher who has made peace with the natural order. He sees death as a return to the elements from which we came, no more alarming than a drop of water returning to the ocean, or a breath of air rejoining the atmosphere. This perspective helps dissolve the artificial boundaries we create between ourselves and the rest of existence, fostering a sense of belonging to something infinitely larger than our individual concerns. The emperor's reflections on the brevity of life serve as a kind of philosophical reset, another purpose beyond acceptance of mortality. They function button, helping us distinguish between what truly matters and what merely seems urgent in the moment. When viewed from the perspective of cosmic time, the embarrassment that keeps us awake at night, the slight from a colleague, the disappointment over unmet expectations all take on a different quality. They don't disappear, but they find their proper proportion within the larger tapestry of existence. Marcus frequently returned to the theme of our interconnectedness with all of humanity. He saw himself not as an isolated individual struggling alone, but as part of a vast community of rational beings all participating in the same cosmic drama. This perspective offers tremendous comfort for those times when we feel lonely or misunderstood. We are never truly alone because we share in the same fundamental human nature as everyone who has ever lived or ever will live. This sense of cosmic citizenship also informed Marcus's approach to dealing with difficult people. Rather than seeing challenging individuals as obstacles to our peace of mind, he encouraged viewing them as the fellow travellers who are simply at different stages of understanding. They act according to their current level of wisdom, just as we act according to ours. This doesn't mean accepting harmful behaviour, but it does mean responding from a place of compassion rather than reactive anger. The Emperor's thoughts on forgiveness emerge from this broader philosophical framework. Forgiveness, in Marcus's understanding, is not primarily about pardoning others for our sake, but about recognizing that holding on to resentment disturbs our own inner tranquility more than it affects those who have wronged us. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the burden of carrying anger and return to the natural state of inner peace that is our birthright as rational beings. Marcus also wrote extensively about the importance of focusing our attention on what is central to all within our power to control. This principle, Stoic philosophy, becomes particularly relevant in our modern age of constant stimulation and information overload. We can choose our responses to events, our attitudes towards circumstances, and our judgments about what we encounter. Everything else, no matter how important it may seem, lies outside our direct control and therefore outside the appropriate scope of our worry and concern. This doesn't mean becoming passive or disengaged from life. Marcus himself was one of history's most active and engaged leaders, commanding armies, governing an empire, and working tirelessly for the welfare of his people. But he did all of this while maintaining an inner detachment from outcomes, understanding that his role was to act wisely and justly, not to control results that depended on factors beyond his influence. The practice of present moment awareness runs throughout Marcus's writings like a gentle stream. He repeatedly reminds himself that the past exists only in memory, and the future only in imagination, while real life unfolds entirely in the present moment. This isn't a call to ignore planning or learning from experience, but rather an invitation to anchor our consciousness in the only time when we actually have any power to act or choose, when anxiety about the future or regret about the past disturbs our peace. We can return to the simple, this heartbeat, this thought recognition that this breath arising now is the only reality we can directly experience. Everything else is mental construction, often useful for practical purposes, but not worthy of the emotional investment we typically give it. Marcus's approach to pleasure and pain offers another layer of wisdom for those seeking rest. He doesn't advocate for the suppression of natural feelings, but rather for maintaining a kind of philosophical perspective that prevents us from being overwhelmed by temporary experiences. Pain, whether physical or emotional, is a natural part of life that need not disturb our fundamental equilibrium. Pleasure, while enjoyable, is also temporary and not worthy of desperate pursuit or anxious attachment. This balanced approach to experience creates a kind of inner stability that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. Like a deep mountain lake that remains calm even when winds disturb its surface, the philosopher's mind maintains its essential tranquility while acknowledging the changing conditions of life. The Emperor's reflections on duty and service provide a beautiful counterbalance to what might otherwise seem like detached indifference. Marcus understood that philosophical wisdom should lead to greater engagement with life, not withdrawal from it. We fulfill our nature as human beings not by avoiding responsibility, but by embracing our roles as members of the human community and working for the common good. This service to something larger than ourselves provides both meaning and comfort. When we align our actions with the welfare of the whole, our individual concerns find their proper place within a larger context. The stress of personal ambition gives way to the satisfaction of contributing to something enduring and worthwhile. As we approach the deeper hours of sleep, we can rest in these ancient insights, knowing that the wisdom Marcus discovered in his tent on the Roman frontier remains available to us tonight. The same capacity for inner peace, the same ability to find meaning in difficulty, the same potential for wisdom and compassion that sustained him through his challenges is present within us now. The gentle acceptance of what cannot be changed, the focused attention on what we can influence, the recognition of our place in the larger whole, the appreciation for the present moment, all of these timeless principles offer us a path toward rest that is both practical and profound. We need not carry the weight of the entire world on our shoulders, for we are part of something much larger that carries us. Tonight we find ourselves guided by Marcus Aurelius through perhaps the most essential practice of all, learning to release what we cannot hold. As you settle into these quiet moments before sleep, let your mind drift to the Emperor's profound understanding that true peace comes not from grasping tightly to outcomes, but from learning the ancient art of letting go. Marcus writes frequently about the futility of clinging to things beyond our control, and his insights feel particularly relevant as we prepare for rest. The day that has just passed brought its disappointing share of unexpected moments, small victories, and encounters with difficult people. Our natural tendency is to replay these events, to wish they had unfolded differently, to hold on to the irritation or the triumph with equal intensity. But the Emperor's wisdom offers us a different path. In one of his most beautiful passages, Marcus reminds himself that we are like actors in a play, whose script we did not write. We can perform our role with dignity and skill, but we cannot control the other characters, the staging, or even how long the performance will run. This metaphor becomes deeply comforting when we apply it to the challenges of daily life. The colleague who disappointed us, the opportunity that slipped away, the physical discomfort that interrupted our plans. All of these are part of a larger production in which we play our part but do not direct the whole. The Emperor's approach to release is neither passive resignation nor bitter cynicism. Instead, it's an active choice to focus our energy where it can actually make a difference. He understood that we waste tremendous amounts of mental and emotional energy trying to control things that are fundamentally beyond our influence. The weather, other people's opinions, the timing of opportunities, the actions of governments, even the aging of our own bodies, these exist in what the Stoics called the sphere of the not up to us. What remains in our control is remarkably simple and remarkably powerful. Our judgments, our responses, our choices about how to interpret and react to whatever life presents. Marcus spent considerable time reflecting on this division, not because it was easy to remember, but because it was so easy to forget. Even an emperor, with all his apparent power over external circumstances, found himself repeatedly drawn into the futile attempt to control the uncontrollable. Consider how this applies to the worries that might be keeping you awake tonight. Perhaps you're concerned about a conversation you need to have tomorrow, a decision someone else needs to make, or a situation that seems to be moving in an unwelcome direction. Marcus would suggest that we begin by clearly distinguishing between what aspects of these situations lie within our power and what aspects do not. The words we choose to speak, the preparation we do, the attitude we bring, these are ours. The other person's response, the ultimate outcome, the timing of resolution, these belong to the larger flow of events. This practice of release extends to our relationship with time itself. The Emperor frequently reflected on the brevity of life, not to induce anxiety, but to help us let go of the illusion that we have unlimited time to nurse grievances, postpone important conversations, or delay living according to our highest values. When we truly internalize the temporary nature of all things, including our own lives, it becomes easier to release the petty irritations and minor disappointments that can consume so much of our mental energy. Marcus also understood that releasing control doesn't mean abandoning care or effort. He remained deeply engaged in the welfare of his empire and his people, but he held his efforts lightly, understanding that he could control only his own contribution to the larger story. This paradox, caring deeply while holding lightly, represents one of the most sophisticated insights of his philosophy. We can pour ourselves into our work, our relationships, our creative endeavours, while simultaneously accepting that the results will emerge from a complex interplay of factors, many of which lie beyond our influence. The practice of release also transforms our relationship with pleasure and pain. Marcus noticed that much of our suffering comes not from difficult circumstances themselves, but from our resistance to those circumstances, our insistence that things should be different than they are. When we learn to receive what comes to us, whether pleasant or unpleasant, without the additional layer of judgment and resistance, the experiences themselves become more manageable. Pain may still be painful, but it need not be accompanied by the extra suffering of anger at the pain, or despair about its presence, or anxiety about its future. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent to genuine problems. Rather, it means responding to difficulties from a place of clarity and acceptance rather than reactive resistance. When we stop fighting against the basic facts of a situation, we often discover resources and possibilities we couldn't see while we were consumed with wishing things were otherwise. The Emperor's reflections on death provide perhaps the deepest teaching about release. He saw death not as a failure or interruption, but as a natural completion, like a fruit falling from a tree when it has ripened fully. This perspective helped him hold life itself more lightly, appreciating each moment while knowing that none of them were permanent. The same awareness that makes death less frightening also makes daily disappointments less devastating. If our time here is temporary anyway, why spend it in futile battles with reality? Marcus often reminded himself that everything in the physical world is in constant flux. The mountain that seems so solid is actually flowing and changing, just at a pace too slow for us to perceive. The troubles that feel so permanent today will dissolve and transform into something else. The people who irritate us are already changing, as are we. This recognition of universal impermanence makes it easier to hold our current experiences lightly, knowing that they too are part of the great flowing river of change. The practice of release also extends to our self-concept and identity. Marcus frequently examined his attachments to reputation, achievement, and even his own personality traits. He recognized that clinging too tightly to any fixed sense of who we are can prevent us from growing and adapting to new circumstances. By learning to hold even our sense of self lightly, we become more flexible, more responsive to what each situation requires of us. This evening, as sleep approaches, you might experiment with this practice of gentle release. Allow your awareness to move through the events of the day, noticing where you might still be gripping tightly to outcomes, holding on to frustrations, or resisting what has already occurred. Can you imagine releasing these concerns into the larger flow of events, trusting that your sincere efforts are enough, regardless of results you cannot control? The Emperor found great peace in remembering that he was part of something much larger than his individual concerns. The same intelligence that guides the movements of stars and seasons is present in the unfolding of human events, even when we cannot perceive the pattern. By aligning ourselves with this larger flow, rather than fighting against it, we find a kind of rest that goes deeper than mere physical relaxation. As you prepare for sleep, let Marcus Aurelius's wisdom remind you that the art of release is also the art of trust. Trust that your genuine efforts matter. Trust that you are part of a meaningful whole. Trust that tomorrow will bring fresh opportunities to respond wisely to whatever arises. In this trust, in this gentle letting go, we find not emptiness, but fullness, not defeat, but a deeper kind of victory. The victory of wisdom over anxiety, of acceptance over resistance, of peace over the exhausting attempt to control what was never ours to control in the first place. Tonight, as we continue our gentle exploration of Marcus Aurelius's profound wisdom, we find ourselves drawn to one of the most practical and comforting aspects of his philosophy, the art of returning to yourself. In a world that constantly pulls our attention outward, toward external concerns and the opinions of others, the Emperor offers us something precious, a way back home to our own inner sanctuary. Marcus writes about this retreat not as an escape from life, but as a necessary practice for engaging with life more skillfully. He reminds himself, and us, that we carry within ourselves everything we need for peace and contentment. This isn't wishful thinking or empty optimism, but a recognition based on careful observation of how the mind works and where true security can be found. Picture Marcus in his tent after a long day of difficult decisions, perhaps having dealt with rebellious generals, conflicting reports from the frontier, or news of plague spreading through the empire. Instead of losing himself in wine or distraction, he turns inward, examining his own thoughts and reactions with the patience of a gardener tending delicate plants. He asks himself, what am I really upset about? What aspects of this situation lie within my power to influence? What am I adding to the problem through my own judgments and interpretations? This practice of self-examination isn't harsh or critical. Marcus approaches his own mind with the same compassion he extends to others, recognizing that his thoughts and emotions arise according to natural laws, just like everything else in the universe. When he notices himself becoming frustrated with a subordinate's incompetence or worried about events beyond his control, he doesn't berate himself for these reactions. Instead, he gently redirects his attention back to what he can actually influence. The emperor understood something profound about the nature of disturbance and peace. He observed that our suffering rarely comes from events themselves, but from our resistance to those events, our insistence that things should be different than they are. A military defeat is a fact, painful, perhaps costly, but simply a fact. The additional layer of suffering comes from our thoughts about the defeat. This shouldn't have happened. I'm a failure as a leader. The gods have abandoned us. These mental additions multiply the original difficulty many times over. Marcus developed a remarkable capacity to separate events from his interpretations of events. When faced with betrayal from a trusted advisor, he could acknowledge the practical problems this created, while simultaneously recognizing that the betrayal said nothing about his own worth or the fundamental orderliness of the universe. The advisor was acting according to his understanding, however flawed, and the emperor's task was to respond wisely rather than to waste energy on outrage or self-pity. This ability to return to himself became especially important as Marcus aged and faced increasing physical discomfort. Ancient sources tell us that he suffered from stomach problems, possibly ulcers, that caused him considerable pain throughout his later years. Yet in his private writings, we see him practicing a kind of philosophical alchemy, transforming even physical suffering into an opportunity for growth. He reminds himself that pain affects only the body, not the essential self, and that accepting unavoidable discomfort with grace is itself a form of virtue. The practice of returning to yourself also involves a deep recognition of what belongs to you and what doesn't. Marcus frequently reminds himself that other people's opinions, outcomes of his efforts, even his reputation in history, none of these things are truly his. They exist outside the circle of his direct control, and therefore outside the realm of his appropriate concern. What belongs to him completely and inescapably are his thoughts, his choices, and his responses to whatever life presents. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or withdrawn. Marcus remained deeply engaged with his responsibilities as emperor, working tirelessly for the welfare of his people and the security of the empire. But he held these efforts lightly, understanding that his role was to contribute his best judgment and effort, while accepting that the results would emerge from a complex interplay of factors, many beyond his influence. The emperor also understood that returning to yourself requires regular practice. Like physical exercise or musical training, this inward turning needs to be cultivated consistently. He made time each evening to review the day's events, not to judge himself harshly, but to learn from his experiences and recommit to his philosophical principles. This wasn't navel-gazing or self-absorption, but practical training in wisdom. Marcus often used metaphors from nature to illustrate this process of returning to inner stability. He compared the disciplined mind to a mountain that remains unmoved by storms, or to a deep well that continues to provide clean water regardless of what debris might fall on its surface. These images suggest not rigidity but resilience, the ability to maintain one's essential nature while adapting skillfully to changing circumstances. The practice becomes particularly powerful when applied to interpersonal difficulties. When Marcus encountered someone whose behaviour troubled him, perhaps a senator more concerned with personal gain than public service, or a general who seemed more interested in glory than in his soldiers' welfare, his first move was to return to himself. Instead of immediately reacting with anger or frustration, he would pause and ask, what does this person's behaviour actually change about my situation? How can I respond in a way that serves the common good? What does this interaction teach me about human nature and my own character? This inward turning also revealed to Marcus the temporary nature of all difficulties. From the perspective of his inner sanctuary, he could see that the crisis that seemed so overwhelming in the morning might resolve itself by evening, or that the person who appeared to be an enemy today might become an ally tomorrow. This broader view didn't minimize genuine problems, but it prevented him from being overwhelmed by them. As we prepare for deeper rest, we can take comfort in knowing that this same refuge Marcus found in his tent 2,000 years ago is available to us tonight. The specific challenges we face may be different. We're not commanding armies or governing empires, but the fundamental human experiences of frustration, worry, disappointment, and uncertainty remain the same, and the same solution that worked for him can work for us. returning to the quiet space within ourselves where we can observe our thoughts without being controlled by them, where we can choose our responses rather than simply reacting, where we can remember what truly matters and what is merely noise. This inner sanctuary isn't something we need to build or earn. It's already there, waiting patiently for our attention. It's the part of us that can watch our emotions rise and fall without being swept away by them, that can acknowledge pain without being destroyed by it, that can face uncertainty without losing its fundamental stability. Marcus called it the ruling faculty, the essential self that makes choices and directs attention. Modern psychology might call it the observing self or mindful awareness, but whatever name we give it, this capacity for self-reflection and conscious choice represents our deepest freedom. Tonight, as you settle into rest, you might experiment with this practice of returning to yourself. Notice what thoughts are moving through your mind. Worries about tomorrow, replaying conversations from today, planning and scheming and wondering. Without judgment, simply observe this mental activity as Marcus observed his own. Notice that there's a part of you that can watch these thoughts without being identical to them. This observing awareness is your inner sanctuary, your retreat that no external circumstance can touch. From this quiet center, you can acknowledge whatever genuine concerns need your attention tomorrow, while releasing the mental chatter that serves no useful purpose. You can appreciate the day's small victories and accept its disappointments with equal grace. You can feel connected to the long line of seekers who have found peace not by changing their external circumstances, but by changing their relationship to those circumstances. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. You don't need special equipment or perfect conditions. You don't need to wait until your life becomes less complicated, or until you've solved all your problems. The sanctuary within is always available, always peaceful, always ready to receive you exactly as you are in this moment. Marcus found it in his tent on the Germanic frontier, surrounded by the challenges of war and governance. You can find it in your bed tonight, surrounded by whatever challenges and blessings make up your particular life. As sleep approaches, let yourself sink into this inner quietude, knowing that whatever tomorrow brings, you carry within yourself everything necessary for meeting it with wisdom, courage, and grace. The same consciousness that allowed Marcus to rule an empire with justice and face death with equanimity lives within you, ready to guide you through whatever adventures and difficulties await. In returning to yourself, you return to the source of all genuine peace, all real strength, all lasting wisdom. Rest now in this knowledge, letting Marcus's ancient insights blend with your own experience, creating a foundation of inner stability that will serve you well in dreams and in waking life alike. The Emperor's tent was temporary, his empire eventually fell, but the wisdom he discovered in those quiet moments of self-reflection continues to illuminate the path toward peace for anyone willing to turn their attention inward and discover the sanctuary that was always there, waiting with infinite patience to welcome them home. As we drift deeper into this gentle night together, let us find ourselves drawn to perhaps the most beautiful paradox in all of Marcus Aurelius's reflections: the art of holding things lightly while caring deeply. This is not indifference masquerading as wisdom, nor detachment born of cynicism. Rather, it is something far more profound and infinitely more difficult to master. The Emperor understood something that eludes many seek peace who have mind. He recognized that our suffering rarely comes from the events themselves, but from our desperate clinging to how we think things should be. We grasp at outcomes like a child clutching soap bubbles, only to watch them burst in our tightened fists. Marcus learned, through years of loss and responsibility, that true strength lies not in holding on, but in the graceful art of letting go. Consider how this wisdom applies to the relationships that fill our lives. We love our family members, our friends, our partners with fierce intensity. Yet how often does this very love become a source of anxiety? We worry about their safety, their choices, their happiness. We try to control their paths, to shield them from pain, to ensure outcomes that lie far. Marcus beyond our influence would suggest just that this angst rasping actually dimmed to love purely issues our ability. When we hold our loved ones lightly, we love. We can completely appreciate them more, journey their unique without demanding that it conform to our expectations. We can offer support without attachment to specific results. We can be present to their joy and their struggles without taking responsibility for outcomes that belong to them alone. Not mean loving. This does less greater wisdom and freedom intends witherly, but rather loving. The same principle applies to our work and creative endeavours. How of us pour many ourselves into projects, only to become so attached to particular results that we lose the joy of the process itself? Marcus reminds us that we can commit fully to our efforts while accepting that the fruits of those efforts are not entirely within our control. We plant seeds with care and attention, but we cannot command the weather, the soil, or the season of harvest. This perspective becomes particularly relevant when we consider our plans and ambitions. The emperor, despite holding the most powerful position in his world, regularly reflected on the temporary nature of all earthly achievements. His reign would end, his empire would eventually fall, his very name might be forgotten. Yet this awareness didn't lead him to despair or inaction. Instead, it freed him to focus on what truly mattered. Acting with justice and wisdom in each present moment, there's something profoundly liberating in recognizing that our individual projects, however important they seem to us, are just small notes in a much larger symphony. This doesn't diminish their value, but it places them in proper perspective. We can pursue our goals with dedication, while maintaining the inner spaciousness that comes from knowing we're part of something infinitely larger than ourselves. Marcus often wrote about the cycles of nature as a teacher for this kind of wisdom. Trees don't cling to their leaves when autumn comes. Rivers don't resist the contours of the landscape they flow through. Seasons change without drama or complaint. There's a natural rhythm of expansion and contraction, growth and rest, that human beings can learn to harmonize with rather than fight against. This doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned to circumstances. Marcus was one of history's most active leaders, constantly engaged in the welfare of his empire and people. But he held his responsibilities lightly, understanding that his role was to contribute his best efforts without being crushed by the weight of outcomes beyond his direct influence. He could make decisions, issue orders, plan campaigns, all while maintaining an inner detachment that preserved his equilibrium. The practice of holding things lightly extends even to our sense of self. Marcus frequently reminded himself that his identity wasn't fixed or permanent. The roles he played, the opinions he held, even his personality traits were subject to change and growth. By not grasping too tightly to any particular version of himself, he remained open to learning, adaptation, and transformation throughout his life. This flexibility of self-concept becomes especially important when we face criticism or disappointment. If we're overly attached to a particular image of ourselves, any challenge to that image becomes threatening. But if we hold our self-concept lightly, we can receive feedback, learn from mistakes, and grow without the crushing weight of defending a fixed identity. We become more resilient and more authentically ourselves. Perhaps nowhere is this wisdom more crucial than in our relationship with time itself. We often live as if we have unlimited time, making elaborate plans stretching far into the future while postponing what truly matters. Marcus regularly contemplated the brevity of life, not to induce morbid preoccupation with death, but to inspire appropriate urgency about living fully in the present. When we truly internalize the temporary nature of our time here, we naturally begin to prioritize differently. The grudges we carry lose their weight. The social dramas that once consumed our attention seem less significant. The approval we desperately seek from others becomes less important than the approval we can give ourselves for living according to our deepest values. This perspective also transforms our relationship with loss. When we understand that everything we cherish is temporary, we can appreciate it more fully while we have it. The meal we're eating, the conversation we're having, the sunset we're watching. These become more precious, not less, when we their fleeting nature. Remember, we stop taking them for granted and begin to savour them with the attention they deserve. Marcus discovered that holding things lightly doesn't mean caring less, more skill, but caring fully. It means loving without possessiveness, working without attachment to results, planning without anxiety about outcomes. It means being fully present to life while simultaneously accepting life's fundamental uncertainty and impermanence. As sleep approaches tonight, you might experiment with this practice of holding lightly. Notice where you might be grasping too tightly, to outcomes, to other people's behaviour, to your own expectations of how things should unfold. Can you imagine releasing that grip just a little? Not abandoning care or effort, but simply loosening the desperate clutch that creates so much unnecessary suffering. The beauty of this practice is that it actually increases our capacity for joy and presence. When we're not constantly worried about controlling outcomes, we have more energy available for experiencing whatever is actually happening. When we're not defending fixed positions, we're more open to surprise and delight. When we hold our plans lightly, we're more available to the unexpected gifts that life offers. Marcus Aurelius learned this art through years of practice and reflection, often in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. If an emperor commanding armies and governing millions could find this kind of inner freedom, surely we too can discover ways to hold our own lives more lightly, not with carelessness or indifference, but with the wise understanding that our deepest peace comes not from controlling outcomes, but from contributing our best efforts with an open heart and a free spirit. Tonight, as you settle into rest, let yourself be held by this ancient wisdom. Feel the relief that comes from loosening your grip on how things must be, and opening to the mystery of how things actually are. In this gentle surrender you may discover not emptiness but fullness, not loss of control, but a deeper kind of freedom that no external circumstance can touch. The emperor's tent was temporary, his empire eventually fell, but the peace he found through holding things lightly continues to offer comfort to anyone willing to practice this timeless art. Rest now in that spaciousness, knowing that tomorrow's challenges can be met with both dedication and detachment, both care and freedom, both love and the wisdom to let go. As the gentle hours deepen around us and the world settles into its quieter rhythms, let us continue our journey through Marcus Aurelius's profound meditations on what it means to live with wisdom in an uncertain world. Tonight we find ourselves drawn to perhaps the most practical question of all. How do we actually implement these ancient insights in the midst of our daily struggles and responsibilities? The emperor understood that philosophy without application is merely intellectual exercise. He didn't write his meditations as abstract theories to be admired from a distance, but as working tools for navigating real challenges. When he reminded himself that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, he wasn't crafting a clever aphorism. He was developing a practical strategy for dealing with the political betrayals and personal disappointments that filled his days. Consider how this applies to the frustrations we encounter in our own lives. The colleague who takes credit for our work, the family member who consistently disappoints us, the stranger whose thoughtless actions disrupt our carefully laid plans. Marcus would suggest that our first response should not be to change these people or circumstances, but to examine our own reactions and choose our responses consciously rather than reactively. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting harmful behaviour. Rather, it means developing what the emperor called the inner citadel, a place of stability within ourselves that remains unshaken regardless of external turbulence. From this inner sanctuary we can respond to challenges with clarity rather than confusion, with purpose rather than mere reaction. The emperor's approach to daily irritations offers us a masterclass in perspective. When faced with difficult people, he would remind himself that they were acting according to their current understanding, however limited it might be. This wasn't naive optimism or willful blindness to human failings. It was a strategic choice to preserve his own peace of mind while remaining engaged with his responsibilities. Marcus frequently wrote intentions are about the importance of morning reflection, of setting for the day before the world's demands could scatter our attention in all directions. He would remind himself of his duties not as burdens to be endured, but as opportunities to practice virtue. Each interaction became a chance to demonstrate patience, each difficult decision a moment to exercise wisdom, each setback an occasion to practice acceptance. This practice of conscious intention becomes particularly powerful when we apply it to our evening routine as well. Rather than simply collapsing at, we can followed by of yearned stress-amined experience, X the accumulate day, exhaust the end of each inquiry harsh self-judgment, but curious self-examination. Not of gentle Marcus. What did I learn today? Where's example did I respond with wisdom, and where did I react from fear or anger? What patterns am I noticing in my thoughts and behaviours? The Emperor's reflections on time offer another practical tool for daily life. He frequently reminded himself of the brevity of all experiences, both pleasant and unpleasant. The meeting difficult that seems to drag on endlessly will be over soon. The embarrassing moment that feels overwhelming will fade from memory. Even our most pressing concerns, when viewed from the perspective of cosmic time, reveal themselves to be temporary visitors in our experience rather than permanent residents. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance of our daily activities, but it helps us hold them more lightly. We can care deeply about our work, our relationships, our creative projects, while simultaneously recognizing that our attachment to specific outcomes often causes more suffering than the outcomes themselves. Marcus learned to pour himself fully into his responsibilities, while accepting that the results would be shaped by countless factors beyond his control. The practice of present moment awareness that runs through all of Marcus's writings becomes especially relevant when we consider how much of our mental energy is typically scattered across past regrets and future anxieties. There returned his Emperor regularly attention to what he could actually influence, his thoughts, his choices, his responses in this moment. Everything else, no matter how important it seemed, fell into the category of things to be acknowledged but not controlled. This doesn't require or hours elaborate meditation techniques of contemplative practice. It can be as simple as taking 3 conscious breaths before responding to a challenging email, or pausing to notice the sensation of how we feel feet on the ground when overwhelmed by competing small of presence creative spaces moments demands. These clarity in which can emerge wisdom. Marcus also understood the importance of community and service in maintaining perspective. When we become too focused on our individual concerns, we lose sight of our connection to the story. He, larger human, reminded regularly himself that his actions rippled outward, affecting not just his immediate circumstances, community, but the broader of which beyond he was part. This sense of purposed personal comfort provided both motivation and consolation during the Emperor's thoughts difficult periods on mortality. While might they seem somber for bedtime contemplation, actually serve as powerful tools for prioritizing what truly matters. When we remember that our time here is limited, petty concerns that typically consume our mental energy naturally fade in importance. The argument that seemed so crucial in the afternoon appears less significant when viewed from the perspective of a life's worth of experiences. This awareness of mortality doesn't lead to despair, but to a kind of grateful urgency about living according to our deepest values. If we truly have limited time, why spend it nursing grudges or postponing important conversations? If our days are numbered, why not use them to practice kindness, to create beauty, to contribute something story? Marcus's practical, meaningful to the human wisdom also extends to how we relate to our own mistakes and failures. Rather than the harsh self-criticism that often follows our missteps, he advocated for out of philosophical kin curiosity about our patterns and limitations. When we fall short of our own standards, we can ask ourselves what we might learn from the experience rather than simply berating ourselves for imperfection. This approach to self-reflection space creates for growth rather than shame. We can acknowledge our errors honestly while maintaining in for ourselves as compass works in progress. The Emperor knew goal that thee was not perfection, but continuous development, not flawless execution, but sincere effort guided by wisdom and kindness. As we prepare rest for deeper, we can carry these practical insights into our dreams tomorrow and Inter's challenges. The same principles that helped Marcus Aurelius govern an empire with justice and maintain his equanimity during periods of warred personal loss are available to us as our own complex we navigate. Lives, we need not wait circumstances for perfect or complete understanding before to apply beginning them. The beauty of Marcus's approach is its accessibility. We don't need to retreat from the world or achieve some elevated state of consciousness. Need to bring more. We simply attention choices to the we're already making, more intention to the responses awareness we're already giving, more to the thoughts we're already thinking. In this gentle awakening to what is already present, we find the seeds of wisdom, peace, and authentic engagement with life as it actually holds. Tonight, as sleep approaches, we can rest in the knowledge that tomorrow offers fresh opportunities to practice these ancient arts wisely. Each of living moment will bring its own invitation to choose: ivity, acceptance, wisdom over react over resistance, presence over distraction. And in making one these choices moment at a time, we join the long tradition of seekers who have found that comes not from changing the deepest piece of the world to match our preferences, whatever, but from learning to meet arises with an open heart and a clear mind. The emperor's tent was temporary, his challenges were specific to his time and place, but the wisdom in those he discover quiet moments of reflection continues to light the way for anyone willing to look within and discover that the sanctuary has always been there, waiting with infinite patience to welcome ourselves and us home to curd to the deeperance of peace that flow beneath all of life's temporary storms. As we settle into these deeper hours, let yourself drift into one of Marcus' most profound and Aurelius's deep practical teachings, the ancient art of mourning. The preparation understood something emperor our thatless modern world has forgotten: rest. We begin that how each day shapes not our actions only, but our very character. His approach to morning reflection offers us a gentle yet powerful practice that can transform both our sleep and our waking hours. Picture Marcus in his tent on, perhaps Germanic, the cold frontiering before. Stir dawn not to the sound of an alarm, but to an inner call toward wisdom. Before of empire the demands could scatter his attention in, he would turnward, examining his thoughts and setting his intentions for the day ahead. This wasn't mere routine, it was spiritual preparation, a daily renewal of his commitment to living according to nature's design. The emperor writes, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They aren't tell good from evil, like this because they can." This might seem like a pessimistic way to start the day, but Marcus wasn't being cynical. He was practicing what we might call philosophical inoculation, preparing his mind to respond with wisdom rather than react with faced with difficult duration when, with frost people and challenging circumstances. This morning practice serves a beautiful dual connects purpose that to our evening rest. By beginning each day with clear intentions and realistic expectations, we create a foundation that allows us to end each day with greater peace. When we've prepared ourselves mentally for the difficulties we might encounter, we're less likely to carry the weight of surprise, disappointment, or resentment into our evening hours. Marcus understood that most of our disturbance come not from the events of the day themselves, but from our unprepared responses to those events. When we expect only interactions pleasant and smooth outcomes, we're setting kind of emotional ourselves up for the turbulence that keeps us awake at night, replaying conversations and gnashing disappointments. But when we begin that challenges each day knowing are natural and opportunities for practicing, we can virtue, meet difficulties with the kind of equanimity that leads to peaceful rest. The Emperor's morning reflections also include a practice of gratitude that can deeply influence the quality of our sleep. He would regularly remind himself of all he'd received, the gifts not just material blessings, but the less obvious gifts of consciousness, reason, the ability to choose his responses, and connection to the larger community of rational beings. This gratitude wasn't forced positivity, but a genuine recognition of what he had been given, a foundation of creating contentment that could sustain day might bring. There in him through whatever there's something particularly beautiful, Marcus approached the relationship about how, between morning and evening reflection preparation, he saw these ascends to the book the morning day, setting for intentions and preparing the mind, the evening for examining how well those intentions had been fulfilled and learning from the day's experiences. This created a natural rhythm of preparation action and reflection that allowed for continuous growth without the harsh self-judgment that so often disturbs our peace. The morning preparation that Marcus practiced included what he called premeditation of difficulties, not dwelling on worst-case scenarios, but calmly considering the awe of challenges he might face and how he could respond to them with wisdom and virtue. This practice might seem counterintuitive for promoting peaceful sleep, but it works in the when opposite way we've mentally prepared for difficulties during our calm morning hours, we're much less likely to be they actually occur off balance when thrown, leading to fewer regrets and anxieties to carry into the night. Marcus also used his morning time to reconnect with his sense. not of purpose and duty as a burden to be endured, but as a calling to be fulfilled. He reminded was part himself that he of something larger than his individual concerns, of the member human community, a participant in the cosmic order, steward of reason, a temporary and virtue in the world. This larger perspective provided both motivation for the day ahead and a framework for understanding whatever difficulties might arise. One of the most touching aspects of this morning practice was his honest emperor acknowledgement of his own struggles. He didn't pretend to be above human challenges or immune to tempt his morning reflectionation. Instead, he used to recommit to his highest values, knowing that he would likely fall short in some ways and would need to begin again the next morning. This Selfian compass, combined with high standards, approach created a sustainable to personal growth that didn't depend on perf, the practice of morning preparation that action. Marcus developed can be adapted for our own lives in ways support that directly better sleep. When we take even a few minutes each morning to set clear intentions, acknowledge potential challenges, and connect with our deeper values, we create a mental framework that allows us to navigate the day with greater wisdom and less reactive stress. This, in turn, means that we arrived time with fewer unresolved conflicts, fewer regrets, and a clearer sense of having lived the day with purpose. Marcus understood that the quality of our sleep is intimately connected to the quality of our daily choices. When we begin each day with preparation and end each day with honest reflection, we create of continuous cycle improvement that gradually reduces the mental and emotional burdens that interfere with rest. We become less likely to lie awake rehashing conversations we wished gone hard differently, because we entered those conversations prepared. We become less likely to lose sleep over unexpected difficulties, because we've already considered how we might respond to challenges grace. The Emperor's approach to morning preparation also included a practice of temporal perspective, reminding himself of the brevity of life and the temporary nature of all difficulties. This wasn't morbid preoccupation, but a way and focusing of maintaining proportion on what truly matters. When we begin each day remembering that our time here is limited and precious, we're more likely to use time wisely and less likely to waste energy on petty concerns that seem insignificant in the larger view. Perhaps most importantly, Marcus's morning practice created a buffer between sleep and the demands of the day. Instead of jolting from rest into immediate action, he allowed for a gentle transition, a time of mental preparation that honoured both the rest he was leaving behind and the activities he was about to engage in. This time created space for wisdom, transit to emerge, and for intentions to crystallize, setting the stage for a day lived with greater consciousness and purpose. Rest. As you tonight, you ancient might consider how this practice of morning preparation could support not only your daily but also life the quality of your sleep. When we begin that we'll each new day with wisdom and intention, we can release grip on trying to control or perfect today's experiences. We can rest in the knowledge that tomorrow offers a fresh opportunity to practice virtue, to respond with wisdom, and to contribute meaningfully to the world. The Emperor something found that this daily rhythm of preparation, action, and reflection created a sense of forward momentum that made even difficult days bearable and, instead meaningful of feeling stuck in patterns and reg of reaction ret. He experienced each day as an opportunity for growth and service. This sense of purpose and progress naturally supports peaceful sleep, as we can rest knowing that our lives are moving in a meaningful direction, even if the day's particular didn't events unfold as we might have hoped. Tonight, as sleep approaches, let yourself be healed about by this ancient wisdom that between morning preparation and evening peace connection. The same who struggle emperored with sleepless nights, on that beginning the frontier discover each day with philosophical preparation was one of the most practical gifts he could give himself. In preparing his mind each morning, he was also preparing for rest each peaceful night, creating a sustainable rhythm of wisdom that could carry him through whatever challenges life might present. As the night deepens around us and our exploration of Marcus Aurelius' ancient wisdom draws closer to its conclusion, let us dwell on perhaps the most transformative insight the Emperor us. The profound offers recognition that we need for possess everything a meaningful life. This isn't hollow optimism of someone who has never faced real, but the difficulty hard-won understanding of the weight of an empire, a man who carry while wrestling with plague and personal loss. Marcus, war to himself, writes with striking clarity about the soft present moment. He reminiscency of Theds himself, and doesn't us, that happiness requires circumstances or the perfect fulfillment of all our desires. Instead, it emerges from the simple recognition breath, this heart, that this beat, this moment of consciousness is complete in itself. We don't need to wait for better health, more success, or different relationships to begin living with wisdom and purpose. This perspective transforms how we relate struggles into our daily disappoint, understand that our peace we truly meant. When depend on external outcomes does now attempting ourselves in fute exhaust, we stop. The beyond our influence to control what lies conversation difficult we've been aiding, the project that isn't going planned, the relationship as that feels strained, all of these become opportunities to practice the ancient art of responding rather than reacting. The Emperor frequently reflects on the temporary nature of all our concerns, not dismissed to importance, but there to help us hold them more lightly. He asks himself to imagine viewing his current troubles from the perspective of cosmic time. Suddenly, and what felt overwhelming to Finn begins its proper proportion. This doesn't mean becoming different or withdrawn from with challenges life, but rather engaging a place of inner from stability rather than reactive anxiety. Marcus offers also us a beautiful framework for understanding our place in the larger community human. He sees himself not isolated individual struggling as an alone, but as part of a vast web of relationships extending space across and time. This recognition brings both humility and comfort. Humility because our individual concerns, they however pressing feel small, are just notes in a much larger symphony. Comfort because we're never truly alone in our struggles. We're connected to everyone who has ever found ways similar challenges and to respond with grace. One of the most practical aspects of Marcus's wisdom is his approach to difficult people and frustrating situations. Rather than seeing challenging individuals as obstacles to our viewing peace, he suggests them as teachers who reveal our own character. When someone treats us unfairly, or acts in ways that trigger our anger, we can respond with the same energy choice. They've brought to the situation, or we can use the encounter as an opportunity to practice patience, understanding, and inner strength. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting harmful Marcus behavior. Was an himself active leader who made decisions and sometimes had to use force to protect his people. But he approached these responsibilities from a place of inner equilibrium rather than reactive emotion. He could act decisively while maintaining compassion for those whose actions he'd to oppose thoughts. The Emperors, while on death they might seem morbid for time contemplation, actually offer profound peace. He doesn't see failure death as or interruption, but as a completion natural, like a falling fruit from a tree when it has ripened fully. This perspective helps our daily put worries into context. If our time here is temporary anyway, why spend our precious moments in unnecessary suffering things we cannot change? Marcus also understood that wisdom is not about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment, but about continuously returning to our highest values, even we after have fallen short of them. He writes about his own honestly struggles with anger, impatience, and disappointment. The goal isn't to transcend human nature, but to skill it, accepting fully with our limitations while still striving to embody virtue as we can. Perhaps most beautifully, the Emperor offers vision of philosophy essay as abstract, not intellectual exercise, but as practical training for situation becomes life. Every an opportunity to practice wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. The traffic jam becomes a chance to practice patience. The difficult colleague becomes an opportunity to demonstrate understanding. The setback becomes a moment to embody resilience. As we prepare for sleep, we can carry with us Marcus' reminder. That's gentle. Tomorrow will bring fresh opportunities to live according to our deepest values. We don't need to solve all our problems tonight, figure out our entire future to only rest. We need in the knowledge that we have within everything ourselves necessary for meeting whatever comes with wisdom and grace. The Emperor's tent was temporary, his empire eventually physical fell, his body returned to dust centuries ago. But the insights he discovered in those quiet moments of reflection continue to offer comfort and guidance to anyone willing to look within. discover in the same sanctuaried him through his of inner peace that sustain greatest challenges. Tonight, as sleep approaches, let yourself rest in this ancient truth. You are enough, exactly as you are, in this moment. The wisdom ages of thee is not something you need to acquire from outside yourself. It's already in your capacity present to choose your response's compass, to extenion, and to find meaning in the simple act of living with awareness and kindness. The same stars that shone down on Marcus Aurelius as he wrote these meditations are reigning on you now, connecting you to the endless chain of seekers who have found that true peace comes not from changing external circumstances, but from discovering the unchanging centre of awareness within. In this recognition, in this gentle homecoming to yourself, all the Emperor's wisdom finds its fulfillment. Rest now in this knowledge, letting these ancient insights blend with your own experience of what it means to be human in an uncertain world. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and opportunities, but tonight you can simply be present to this moment, this breath, this quiet recognition that you are part of something infinitely larger and more meaningful than your individual concerns. The meditation has been shared and complete. The wisdom housed in the silence that follows, may you find the same peace that Marcus Aurelius discovered in his tent on the frontier so long ago. The peace that comes from accepting what cannot be changed, working wisely with what can be influenced, and resting in the profound sufficiency of simply being present to whatever this moment brings. Marcus Aurelius wrote frequently about what he called the view from above, and as sleep draws nearer, this ancient practice offers us particular comfort. The Emperor understood that much of our daily anxiety comes from being too close to our problems, seeing them only from ground level where difficulty every looms large and every setback feels permanent. But when we learn to step back, to imagine ourselves looking down from a great height at the affairs of human beings, our troubles begin to find their proper proportion. Picture yourself rising slowly above your current concerns, ascending until you can see your entire day laid out below like a map. The conversation that troubled you this afternoon, the deadline that seemed so urgent, the disappointment that felt overwhelming. From this elevated perspective, they appear as small incidents in a much larger landscape. Not insignificant, but no longer consuming the entire horizon of your awareness. Marcus this exercise practiced not to diminish the importance of his responsibilities. He remained engaged deeply of his empire with the welfare, but to maintain the inner equilibrium necessary for wise action. When we're caught the immediate in drama of our circumstances, we often react from emotion and see our situation of a larger pattern we're as part. But when we can, rather than wisdom, more likely to respond with clarity and purpose, this shift in perspective becomes when we extend especially powerfully our view across time as space. The Emperor regularly has reminded himself that the challenges he faced were not unique to his era. The same human doctor times before animus had played out countless would continue long after his death. People had with difficult always struggle relationships to uncertainty, face about the future, dealtment. With loss and disappoint. This recognition brought humility and comfort both. Humility in realizing he was part of something much larger than himself, and comfort in knowing that others had navigated similar difficulties with grace. From view this cosmic point, Marcus could also see the temporary nature of all Earth crisisly concerns. The political that seemed so today crucial would be forgotten a generation within. The people who currently praised or blamed him would soon be dust, as would he himself. This wasn't a mockupation, but a liber orbid pre that freeting recognitioned him, from excessive attachment to outcomes from above, also reveal beyond his control, the view the interconnectedness of all things. What from appear ground level to be separate isolate, events could be seen from this broader great perspective as part of one flowing process. His actions individual were threads in a vast tapestry, connected affecting to an other countless threads in ways never fully understand might. This recognition inspired both, and surrender responsibility. Responsibility to play his part well wisdom that guided the whole, and surrenders to the larger. As you prepare for sleep tonight might experiment, you practice. Allow with this ancient your gradually above awareness to lift your immediate concerns, seeing them from an increasing distance until they find their natural place within the broader landscape of your life. Notice how this shift in perspective affects your relationship to whatever has troubling you today been. The problems don't disappear, but they may longer seem to require the urgent IS attention you have been giving them. Also appreciate this elevated viewpoint. You can aspects of your life that may have been hidden when you were too close to see them clearly. The love of family and pleased friends, the simple of consciousness fact itself, the remarkable that you exist at all in this vast cosmos. These gifts often become invisible when we're focused narrowly on immediate challenges, but the view from above, they shine with quiet radiance. The Emperor understood that this practice required regular cultivation. Our natural tendency is to get pulled back into ground-level concerns, to lose ourselves again in the immediate drama of daily life. But each time we remember lift our perspective, we strengthen muscle. Like our capacity for wisdom that grows stronger with exercise, our ability to see from A and peace this broader viewpoint develops through also recognize that the two compass practice. Marcus leads view from above naturally part of the struggles as human condition universalian. When we see our own, we're more likely to extend understanding to others who are facing their own difficulties. The colleague who seemed unreasonable, the family member who disappointed us, the stranger who elevated us poorly. From perspective, we see them as fellow travellers dealing with their own challenges as best they know how. This doesn't mean accepting behaviour or avoiding necessary action remain. Marcus an active and effective leader while maintaining this broader perspective, but he could engage with difficulties from a place of inner stability and motion. He, rather than reactive, could make decisions based on wisdom rather than the urgency of the moment. He could remain committed to his values while holding lightly to specific outcomes. Tonight, as sleep approaches, let this ancient wisdom offer you rest, challenges you're facing, whatever is cycling through your mind. Remember that you have access to this same elevated viewpoint that sustained the Emperor through his greatest trials. Your problems, but they're also temporary, are real. Your responsibilities matter, but you're also larger and part of something infinitely more enduring than your individual concerns. From the view from above, you can see that this day, with just all its joys and sorrows, is one day in a life that is itself just one life in the great human story. This doesn't diminish the value of your experience places, but it in context. You can care deeply while lightly. Holding, you can act with purpose while accepting fully uncertainty. You can engage with life while resting in the knowledge that you're held by something greater than yourself. The Emperor wrote these words while commanding armies on distant frontiers, dealing with plagues and rebellions and personal tragedies. Yet through that it all, he maintained this broader perspective allowed him to find peace even in the midst of chaos. The same wisdom is available to you tonight, offering rest not through the of all solution problems, but through the recognition that you don't need all problems to solve order to find peace. As consciousness begins to fade and sleep draws near, let yourself rest in this ancient understanding. The view from above is always available, always offering its gifts of perspective and peace. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and opportunities, but tonight you can simply be present to this moment, held by the same cosmic order that sustained Marcus Aurelius in his tent many centuries so ago. In this elevated awareness, naturally, worry dissolves not because problems disappear, but because we remember our true place in the grand scheme of things. We are temporary visitors in an eternal cosmos, here for just a brief moment to play our part in existence. From the great drama of this perspective, how could we be anything but grateful for the simple gift of awareness itself? Sleep comes more easily when we're not trying to carry the weight of the entire world on our shoulders. The view from above reminds us that the world was here before us and will continue after we're gone, held together by forces far greater anisa than our individual understanding. We can do our part, play our role, contribute our verse to the great poem of existence, and then rest as part of something magnificently fully in the knowledge that we are and enduring. Tonight, as you settle into sleep, carry ancient gift of perspective. Let you this, with the view from above, show you the proper proportion of things, the temporary nature of all difficulties, and presence the eternal of the wisdom that guides all existence you can. In this recognition, find the peace that allowed an emperor to sleep soundly, even while carrying the weight of an empire, the peace that comes not from having all the answers but from trusting the larger intelligence that holds us all. As gentle the darkness settles around like a familiar at us embrace, we find ourselves drawn one to of Marcus Aurelius's most profound insights. The recognition that true strength lies not in forcing the world to bend to our will, but in the graceful art of adapting ourselves to what cannot be changed. Tonight, as your breathing naturally ends and your thoughts deep begin to slow, let this us explore ancient wisdom about flexibility, Marcus and resilience. Picture in his tent perhaps after receiving news that would challenge even thick of heart's most stoic. Maybe a trusted general had betrayed him, or a carefully laid strategy had carried the face of unexpected in circumstances. In such moments, he didn't rage or against fate exhaust himself fighting unchangealities. Instead, he turned red to a practice that would become one of his most valuable teachings, the art of inner flexibility. The emperor understood something that our modern world often forgets, that rigidity breaks while flexibility endures. When a mighty oak faces a storm, its snap-strong branches may under pressure, but the humble reed bends with the wind and survives. Marcus that the same principle applies to the discover human soul, the mind that is everything and must unfold according to its preferences becomes but easily shattered by life's inevitable surprises. But the consciousness that learns to flow with circumstances while maintaining its core principles develops an unshakable strength. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting situations without harmful response. Marcus remained of history one's most decisive leaders while practicing this inner flexibility. The key lies in understanding what the Stoics called the fundamental distinction between what is up to us and what is not up to us. Our responses, our choices in moment, our each attitude toward events. These remain forever within our power, but the actions of others, the timing of opportunities, the weather tomorrow, the ultimate outcome of our efforts, these exist beyond our direct control. When we truly realize this distinction, remarkable happens. We, something in turn, stop W and we uncontrollable, wasting precious energy on futile attempts to control the discover vast reserves of power in the realm actual of our influence. It's like discovering that you've to move been trying a mountain with your bare hands, when you could have been building it and steer a bridge around. Marcus wrote about this principle during his campaigns along the Danube, where military success often depended on adapting quickly to changing conditions. A general who insisted on following his original battle plan regardless movements would likely have enemy-face defeat. But a leader who could maintain strategic vision while remaining flexible about tactics had the best chance of achieving his goals. Apply. The emperor this same wisdom to every aspect of life. Consider how this applies to the frustrations we encounter in daily life. The colleague who consistently ints us disappoint. The technology that fails at crucial that makes moments. The traffic us late despite our best planning. These experiences' sources become only of suffering when we insist they should. But when we learn to receive be different them as natural variations in life's rhythm, they lose their power to disturb our peace. This practice requires cultivating what Marcus called the discipline of desire, learning to want what happens than demanding rather that what we want should happen. This sounds paradoxical at first, even potentially defeatist. But it's actually the foundation of genuine empowerment. When we align our desires with reality as it unfolds, we find ourselves swimming life rather than exhaust, with the current of ourselves fighting against it. The emperor discovered that this alignment doesn't diminish our capacity for action, it enhances it. When we're not deploy our energy through itting resistance to unchangeable facts, more resources available, we have for creative response. We become like skilled martial and artists who use opponents' force to their advantage, rather than meeting strength with opposing strength. This wisdom extends to our relationship with time itself. Marcus frequently reflected on the temporary nature of all experiences, both pleasant and difficult. The promotion we receive, the relationship that ended, the opportunity that passed us of these disappoint by, all moments become less burdensome when we remember that landscape of our lives is constantly shifting. What lost today seems like a permanent may reveal gift tomorrow, itself as a hidden, or simply as one note in a much larger symphony whose full beauty cannot yet perceive. The practice of flexibility also transforms how we relate own limitations to our was. Marcus honest about his shortcomings, his struggles with anger, his difficulties with certain people, his physical ailments. But rather these challenges than treating as enemies to be conquered, he learned to work with them as natural aspects human condition. This self-compassion freed him from the exhausting project of trying to become perfect and him to focus on allow gradual improvement within constraints of his actual nature. As you rest here tonight, you might consider where in your own life you've been struggling against immovable realities. Perhaps there's a situation at work that refuses to resolve as hoped you'd, or a relationship that isn't developing according to your expectations. What would it feel like to release that tight grip on how things should be, and instead open your hands to receive what actually is? This release isn't about giving up hope or abandoning your goals. It's about holding those aspirations lightly, pursuing them with dedication, while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. It's about trusting that the universe is unfolding, however mysterious, contains intelligence and purpose beyond our current understanding. Marcus often himself reminded that he was part of something infinitely larger than his individual concerns. This cosmic perspective helped him maintain flexibility even during the most challenging periods of his reign. When a particular strategy failed or a trusted advisor proved unreliable, he could step back and see these events as temporary disturbances in a vast harmoned, essentially a system. Tonight, as sleep approaches, let yourself rest in this same awareness. Feel expands how you much held by forces greater than your personal will, intelligence around you, the mysterious, the earth beneath you, the air that keeps your conscious effort. In this recognition, heart beating without your of place in the larger whole-ration's naturally frustments and fin disappoint, individual proportion their proper. The Emperor practices led him of flexibility ultimately to a profound trust of life itself. He came that to see in the process obstacles the universe not as evidence apparent was working against him, but as opportunities for growth. Each day with curiosity rather than anxiety wisdom opened him to approach. This trust allowed, and deeper creativity lessons to whatever with it you this ancient sleep carry might bring. As you prepare for invitation flexibility, tomorrow will undoubtedly bring its own mixtured and surprising don't need to know, need to maintain of expect. But you in from your everything will unfold. Your only openness to receive elements comes, your advance how responding from each experience, and your commitment to whatever willingness to learn your highest, than your immediate wisdom, rather watery, this flexibility, not weakness reactions of strength. Thence of that can flow as kin the resol way to flower unlikely. In fin you'll the deep obstacle, the adaptability of life, rest around any most that finds us in conditions same, the knowledge that you possess this now in capacity for graceful adaptation, this your essential thread without breaking, to flow without losing same ability nature. To bend cannot destroy flexibility the fundamental you, but they of shake that has storms of life may learn to dance with whatever music a whirl the consciousness is to play. As the night draws us deeper into stillness, we find ourselves approaching one of Marcus Aurelius's most profound and practical teachings, the art of morning intention and evening reflection. This gentle rhythm of preparation and examination became the Emperor's compass through the storms of leadership, and tonight, as sleep beckons, we can discover how this ancient practice might guide our own days to war and purpose. Pictured greater peace Marcus in his tent, perhaps after a particularly challenging day of negotiations with hostile tribes, or dealing with reports of plague spreading through distant provinces. Rather than simply collapsing into exhausted sleep, he would turn to his journal, not to record events as a historian might, but to examine his own responses, his choices, his growth as a human being. This wasn't harsh self-judgment, but gentle inquiry, the way a gardener might examine plants at day's end, noting what flourished and what needed tending. The Emperor understood something we often forget in our hurried lives, that each day offers us countless opportunities to practice wisdom, and without conscious reflection, these moments slip away unnoticed. He wrote not for posterity but for clarity, using his evening hours to process the day's experiences and extract their deeper lessons. This practice of reflection wasn't separate from his philosophy, but was philosophy in action, the daily cultivation of inner strength and wisdom. Marcus would ask himself searching questions that cut through the surface drama of daily events to their essential meaning. When faced with a subordinate's incompetence, did he respond with wisdom or reactive frustration? When receiving bad news from the frontier, did he maintain his equilibrium or allow anxiety to cloud his judgment? When dealing with political rivals, did he act from his highest principles or sink to their level of pettiness? But this examination wasn't a grim accounting of failures. Instead, it was more like a gentle conversation with a wise friend, someone who could observe our patterns without judgment while encouraging us toward growth. Marcus approached his own shortcomings with the same compassion he tried to extend to others, recognizing that all human beings are works in progress, learning and stumbling and learning again. The morning side of this practice was equally important. Before the day's demands could scatter his attention in all directions, Marcus would set clear intentions, prepare his mind for the challenges ahead, and connect with his deeper values. He would remind himself that he would likely encounter difficult people, unexpected setbacks, and his own internal resistance to doing what was right. This wasn't pessimism, but practical wisdom, the mental equivalent of a soldier checking his equipment before battle. This morning preparation included what the Stoics called the premeditation of difficulties, not dwelling on worst-case scenarios, but calmly considering what challenges might arise and how he could meet them with virtue. If he learned that a trusted advisor had betrayed him, he would already have reflected on how such news could be received with equanimity rather than rage. If he faced military defeat, he would have considered how to respond with courage rather than despair. Marcus also used his morning time to reconnect with his sense of purpose and duty. He would remind himself that his role as emperor was not about personal glory or power, but about serving the common good of the empire and its people. This larger perspective helped him approach even mundane administrative tasks as opportunities to practice justice and wisdom. Every decision, every interaction, every choice became a chance to align his actions with his highest values. The Emperor's approach to this daily rhythm offers us a template for creating more intentional lives. When we begin each day by setting clear intentions and end each day by reflecting on how well we lived up to those intentions, we create a cycle of continuous growth and self-awareness. This isn't about achieving perfection, but about becoming more conscious participants in our own lives, rather than merely reactive beings buffeted by circumstances. Consider how this practice might transform your relationship with daily challenges. Instead of being caught off guard by difficult people or unexpected problems, you could approach each day having already considered how to respond wisely to whatever arises. Instead of carrying the weight of unexamined experiences into sleep, you could process each day's events with gentle curiosity, extracting their lessons and releasing what no longer serves you. The beauty of Marcus's approach is its simplicity. You don't need special equipment or perfect conditions. You need only a few minutes in the morning to set intentions and connect with your deeper values, and a few minutes in the evening to reflect on how the day unfolded. This creates what we might call bookends for conscious living, framing each day with mindful attention, rather than letting time slip by unexamined. Marcus understood that this practice was particularly important for those in positions of responsibility and stress. The greater our external demands, the more we need these moments of inner reflection to maintain our equilibrium and perspective. Without this regular return to our centre, we risk becoming reactive rather than responsive, driven by circumstances rather than guided by wisdom. The Emperor's evening reflections often included gratitude for the day's experiences, both pleasant and difficult. He saw each challenge as an opportunity to practice virtue, each difficult person as a teacher showing him how to maintain his inner peace, each setback as a chance to develop resilience. This perspective transformed even the most trying days into valuable experiences in the school of life. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, you might experiment with this ancient practice. Consider the day that's ending not with harsh judgment, but with gentle curiosity. What moments challenged you? How did you respond? What did you learn about yourself and others? What are you grateful for? And as you settle into sleep, you can set intentions for tomorrow, not rigid expectations, but gentle aims for how you might show up more consciously in the world. Marcus Aurelius discovered that this daily rhythm of intention and reflection created a kind of inner stability that external circumstances couldn't shake. By beginning each day with clear purpose and ending each day with honest examination, he developed the capacity to remain centered even in the midst of empire-shaking crises. The same practice that sustained a Roman emperor through wars and plagues can help us navigate our own complex lives with greater wisdom and peace. In this gentle rhythm of morning preparation and evening reflection, we find not just a technique but a way of life, a path toward becoming more conscious, more intentional, more aligned with our deepest values. As sleep approaches, we can rest knowing that tomorrow offers fresh opportunities to practice this ancient art of conscious living, to meet whatever arises with wisdom and grace, and to end each day a little wiser and more at peace than when it began. The emperor's tent has long since turned to dust, but the wisdom he cultivated through this daily practice continues to offer guidance to anyone seeking to live with greater intention and awareness. In the rhythm of preparation and reflection, morning intention and evening gratitude, we find a timeless path toward inner peace that no external circumstances can disturb. As the quieter hours embrace us and our philosophical journey draws toward its gentle conclusion, we find ourselves exploring one of the most practical and comforting aspects of Marcus Aurelius's wisdom, the art of daily practice and the cultivation of inner habits that sustain us through life's inevitable changes. Tonight, as sleep beckons, let us discover how the emperor transformed abstract philosophy into lived experience, creating a framework for daily existence that remains as relevant today as it was in his military tent centuries ago. Marcus understood that wisdom without application remains merely intellectual decoration. He didn't write his meditations as theoretical exercises to be admired from a distance, but as working tools for the practical business of living. Each reflection was tested against the harsh realities of governing an empire, commanding armies, and facing personal losses that would have broken lesser spirits. His insights emerged not from the comfort of an academic study, but from the crucible of real responsibility and genuine suffering. Consider how this applies to our own daily struggles with frustration, disappointment, and the countless small irritations that can accumulate into genuine distress. Marcus developed what we might call a philosophical first aid kit, a set of practices and perspectives he could reach for in moments of difficulty. When faced with a subordinate's incompetence, a military setback, or news of plague spreading through distant provinces, he had trained himself to pause, examine his initial reactions, and choose his response consciously rather than reactively. The emperor's approach to morning preparation offers us a beautiful template for beginning each day with intention rather than anxiety. Before the demands of empire could scatter his attention across 100 urgent matters, Marcus would turn inward, setting clear intentions for how he wished to meet whatever the day might bring. He would remind himself that he would likely encounter difficult people, unexpected challenges, and his own internal resistance to doing what was right. This wasn't pessimistic preparation but practical wisdom, the mental equivalent of a traveller checking his supplies before embarking on a journey. This practice of conscious preparation serves a dual purpose that connects directly to our evening rest. By beginning each day with realistic expectations and clear values, we create a foundation that allows us to end each day with greater peace. When we've mentally prepared for difficulties, we're less likely to be thrown off balance when they occur, leading to fewer regrets and anxieties to carry into our sleeping hours. The emperor discovered that the quality of our rest is intimately connected to the quality of our daily choices. Marcus also understood the importance of what we might call philosophical maintenance, the regular care and attention required to keep our inner resources strong and available. Just as a gardener tends to plants daily rather than waiting for them to wither, the emperor cultivated his philosophical perspective through consistent practice. He would regularly examine his thoughts, question his assumptions, and realign himself with his deeper values, not waiting for crises to force this kind of reflection. The emperor's evening practice of reflection offers us another powerful tool for processing each day's experiences before they can disturb our rest. Rather than letting events pile up unexamined in our minds, Marcus would take time each evening to review what had occurred, not with harsh self-judgment, but with gentle curiosity. What had he learned about himself and others? Where had he responded with wisdom? and where had fear or anger guided his choices? What patterns was he beginning to notice in his own behaviour? This nightly examination served multiple purposes beyond simple self-awareness. It provided closure to the day's activities, preventing them from continuing to churn in his mind after he tried to sleep. It offered opportunities for self-forgiveness when he had fallen short of his own standards, recognising that growth comes through practice rather than perfection, and it allowed him to notice and appreciate the small victories and moments of grace that might otherwise go unacknowledged. Perhaps most importantly, Marcus developed a practice of gratitude that went far deeper than mere positive thinking. He regularly reminded himself of all he had received, not just material blessings, but the less obvious gifts of consciousness, reason, the ability to choose his responses, and connection to the larger community of rational beings. This gratitude wasn't forced optimism, but a genuine recognition of what he had been given, creating a foundation of contentment that could sustain him through whatever challenges arose. The Emperor's understanding of time offers another practical for daily tool living. He frequently himself of remind the brevity of life and the temporary nature of all experiences, both pleasant and unpleasant. This awareness didn't lead to morbid preoccupation with death, but to a healthy urgency about living according to his highest values. Why spend precious time nursing grudges or postponing important conversations? Why waste energy on petty concerns when each day offers fresh opportunities to practice wisdom, kindness, and service? Marcus also developed a practice of perspective that we might call the view from above, regularly imagining himself looking down from a great height at the affairs of human beings. From this elevated viewpoint, the problems that loomed so large at ground level found their proper proportion within the larger landscape of existence. The embarrassment that felt overwhelming in the morning might seem insignificant by evening. The conflict that consumed his attention during the day could be seen as one small incident in the vast flow of human experience. This shift in perspective wasn't an escape from responsibility, but a way of maintaining the inner equilibrium necessary for wise action. When we're too close to our problems, seeing them only from ground level, we often react from emotion rather than wisdom. But when we can step back and see our situation as part of a larger pattern, we're more likely to respond with clarity and purpose. The Emperor's approach to difficult people provides another practical framework for daily interaction. Rather than seeing challenging individuals as obstacles to our peace of mind, he suggested them as teachers viewing who reveal our own character. When someone treats us unfairly or acts in ways that trigger our anger, we have a choice. We can respond with the same energy they've brought to the encounter of the situation, or we can use it mean becoming does in strength. This passive or accepting and inner as an opportunity to practice patience, understanding harmful behaviour. Active was Marcus himself and leader who made difficult decisions and sometimes had to use force to protect his people, but he approached these responsibilities from a place of inner equilibrium rather than reactive emotion. He could act decisively while maintaining compassion for those whose actions he had to oppose. The Emperor's thoughts on morning routines and the difficulty of rising from bed offer a touching reminder of his humanity, while providing practical wisdom for our own daily beginnings. Even Marcus Aurelius, this towering figure of ancient philosophy, struggled with what we might recognize as our own reluctance to leave the comfort of sleep and face the day's responsibilities. But notice how he transformed this very human weakness into an opportunity for philosophical reflection. Rather than berating himself for these natural inclinations, Marcus used them as occasions to reflect on purpose and duty. He reminded himself that human beings are made for activity, for contributing to the common good, for engaging with life rather than retreat. Yet he did this with a gentleness toward himself that we might learn from in our own self-talk. The goal wasn't perfection, but sincere effort guided by wisdom and compassion. As we prepare for deeper rest tonight, we can carry these practical insights with us, knowing that tomorrow offers fresh opportunities to apply this ancient wisdom to our modern principles that help challenges. The same Marcus Aurelius govern justice empire with and maintain equanimity during periods of warred personal loss are unavailable to us as we navigate our own complex lives. We wouldn't wait for perfect circumstances or complete understanding before beginning to practice these approaches. The beauty lies in its accessibility. Of Marcus's wisdom, We don't need to retreat from elevate the world or achieve some state of consciousness. We simply need to bring more attention to the choices we're already making, more intention to the responses we're already giving, more awareness to the thoughts we're already thinking. In this gentle awakening to what is already present, we find the seeds of wisdom, an authentic peace engagement with life as it actually unfolds. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and opportunities, but tonight we can rest in the knowledge that we possess the tools for meeting whatever arises with greater consciousness and grace. The emperor's tent was temporary, his empire eventually fell, his physical form returned to dust long ago. But the wisdom he discovered in those quiet moments of self-reflection continues to offer guidance and comfort to anyone willing to look within and discover the same capacity for reason, compassion, and inner strength that sustained him through his greatest trials. As sleep approaches, let yourself rest in this understanding ancient. You carry within yourself everything necessary for living with wisdom and dignity, for meeting challenges with courage, and for finding meaning in the simple act of conscious participation in the great human story. The same consciousness that allowed an emperor to rule with justice and face uncertainty with equanimity lives within you, ready to guide you through whatever adventures and difficulties await. Tonight, as you settle into rest, know that you are part of a long tradition of seekers who have found that true peace comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from cultivating the inner resources that no external force can touch. In this recognition, in this gentle homecoming to your own deepest nature, you join Marcus Aurelius and others who have discovered that wisdom, kindness, and inner strength are not distant goals to be achieved, but present realities to be awakened and lived. The meditation is complete, the ancient wisdom has been shared, and in the silence that follows may you find the same profound peace that the emperor discovered in his tent on the frontier so many centuries ago. Rest well, knowing that tomorrow's dawn will offer new opportunities to practice the timeless arts of conscious living, and that each choice you make in awareness and compassion adds another thread to the beautiful tapestry of human wisdom and growth. As we approach the gentle close of our journey through these ancient reflections, we find ourselves drawn to one final insight that Marcus Aurelius carried with him through his most challenging moments: the profound recognition that wisdom is not a destination we arrive at, but a way of travelling through each present moment with awareness and grace. Picture the emperor in his final years, perhaps sensing that his time was drawing short, yet approaching each dawn with the same philosophical curiosity that had sustained him through decades of leadership and loss. He understood something that our restless modern minds often forget: that the goal is not to accumulate insights like treasures in a vault, but to embody them so completely that they become as natural as breathing, as instinctive as a tree turning toward light. The beauty of Marcus's approach lies in its gentle persistence. He didn't expect himself to achieve perfect wisdom overnight, nor did he become discouraged when he found himself falling back into old patterns of worry or frustration. Instead, he treated each moment of awareness as a small victory, each return to philosophical principles as a homecoming rather than a failure that needed to be corrected. This perspective offers us tremendous comfort as we prepare for rest. We need not carry the weight of becoming perfectly wise or completely enlightened. We need only remember that each time we pause to consider our responses rather than simply reacting, each time we choose compassion over criticism, each time we accept what cannot be changed while working skillfully with what can be influenced, we are practicing the same art that sustained one of history's most thoughtful leaders. Marcus often reflected on the temporary nature of all roles and identities. He was emperor for a time, philosopher for a time, father and husband for a time. But beneath all these changing roles was something constant: the capacity for awareness, for choice, for returning again and again to what matters most. This returning, this gentle persistence in the face of life's inevitable distractions, is perhaps the most practical wisdom he offers us. The emperor's final meditations often carried a sense of completion without finality. He had come to understand that a life well lived is not measured by its length or by the magnitude of its achievements, but by the quality of attention brought to each ordinary moment. The conversation with a difficult colleague, the decision about how to spend an evening, the choice of what thoughts to entertain while falling asleep, These small moments accumulate into the substance of a life. Tonight, as we rest in the wisdom of these ancient reflections, we can take comfort in knowing that we are part of a conversation that has been continuing for centuries. The same questions that kept Marcus Aurelius awake in his tent, questions about meaning, mortality, duty, and love, are the ones that visit us in our quiet moments. The same capacity for wisdom, compassion, and inner strength that he cultivated is present within us, ready to be developed through the same gentle, persistent practice he described in his private notes. The emperor's tent was temporary, his empire eventually fell, his physical form returned to the elements long ago. But the insights he discovered in those quiet moments of self-reflection continue to offer guidance to anyone willing to turn their attention inward and discover the same sanctuary of inner peace that sustained him through his greatest challenges. In recognizing this continuity, this connection across time, we find both humility and comfort. Humility in knowing we are part of something much larger than ourselves, and comfort in knowing we are never truly alone in our struggles with what it means to be human. As sleep draws near, we can rest in the knowledge that tomorrow offers fresh opportunities to practice these timeless arts of conscious living. Each choice to respond with wisdom rather than react with emotion, each moment of accepting what cannot be changed while working skillfully with what can be influenced, each return to presence when our minds wander into anxiety or regret. These are the small, daily practices that, over time, create a life of meaning and peace. The same stars that shone down on Marcus Aurelius as he wrote his meditations are shining tonight, connecting us to the endless chain of seekers who have found that true peace comes not from changing external circumstances to match our preferences, but from cultivating the inner resources that no external force can touch. In this recognition, in this gentle homecoming to our own deepest nature, all of the Emperor's wisdom finds its fulfillment. Rest now, knowing that you carry within yourself everything necessary for living with dignity and purpose, for meeting challenges with courage, and for finding meaning in the simple act of conscious participation in the great human story. The meditation is complete, the ancient wisdom has been shared, and in the silence that follows may you find the same profound peace that Marcus Aurelius discovered in his tent on the frontier so many centuries ago. Good night and sweet dreams.